Hello, everyone. You must have seen the topic. The topic is National Education Policy, what's there for the EdTech sector. We have a very interesting and diverse panel today, and I'm soon going to introduce you to them. Let me first invite Prasheel, who's Vice Chancellor of Avantika University. Prasheel. Can you please send Prasheel to the stage, please? Karan? Karan, can you please send the panel participants on the stage, please? Yeah. Hi, Gauri.
Hi, Manish. Thank you for inviting me.
Great. I will just wait for Prasheel also to come in, and then we'll begin.
Yes, there were some technical glitches backstage. Prasheel appeared, so yeah.
No problem. And I think we are also expecting Vyas, the CEO of Next Education, in the same panel. In the interim, Gauri, why don't you just introduce yourself to the audience? I think it takes a couple of minutes to do that.
Sure. So thank you, Manish. Thank you for inviting me to this panel, and it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Gauri Gupta, and I lead the EdTech vertical at the Central Square Foundation. Have been with CSF for about 3 years now, and we'll talk more about our work. But before CSF, was part of the skills and employability space, was part of the National Skill Development Corporation as part of the founding team when it was set up in 2010. And before moving into the development sector, I used to work with the Boston Consulting Group, basically in the financial services space. So that's been my career so far.
Great. I think while we wait for others to join in, maybe we can begin with the first question itself. And the format, Gauri, would be rounds of topics that we will discuss, and each one of you could take 3-4 minutes, 5 minutes to talk about it. And we'll try and cover 3-4 aspects. So I think why don't you begin with first, Gauri, at a higher level, what all things you like, top 2-3 things you liked in the new education policy, things you think could have been done better. So at a national education policy level, and the subsequent questions will be more towards EdTech. But I think I just want your view about NEP.
Yes. So, in my mind, it's a landmark policy. Right? One, because it's coming after such a long time, right? In my mind, it's fairly pragmatic in the way in which it has been created, right? A lot of thinking has gone behind it. I think for me, the outstanding, the things which stand out are one is the imperative on and the focus on foundational literacy and numeracy. Right, and the context being that there is enough literature to show that if a child is not able to reach with comprehension and do basic math by age 8 or grade 3, then learning curve for life is flat, right? And till now in India, the salience would always be around board exam results and so on and so forth. I think that is one thing which stands out for me. I think from the perspective of EdTech, it talks about the creation of the NETF, which is, this one apex organization wanting to look at EdTech holistically, right? In my mind, more could have been done around EdTech, but at least it's a small step in the direction of EdTech. The third thing which I think stands out for me in the new education policy is the focus on teacher professional development, right? I think the beauty will be in how well it's implemented, right? Because many people have spoken about it, but at least this policy, calls out the different approaches through which teacher professional development can be looked at. So those, in my mind, would be the 3 which are extremely exciting.
Great. We also have Vyas now. Vyas, welcome to the
panel. Hello, guys.
Hi. Vyas, if you can take a couple of minutes to introduce you and your organization. And then the question I was asking Gauri was, at the higher level, what all things you liked in the new education policy, things that you think are left out. Subsequent rounds will be on around EdTech, and the format of the conversation is 3-4 minutes for each of you to talk about response to the questions that I raised. Go ahead.
Okay. So, well, I mean, I'm Vyas, and we run a company called Next Education, which is in the field of like K-12 education, and we focus on enabling schools and teachers around, having tools to deliver the 21st century education in the platforms, etc., which are required for all that. And look, we have been doing this almost for a decade now. And look, about the education policy, I think especially in K-12 focus, I see one thing is very good is the whole pre-primary setup and aligning it with the modern, Western world style of 4-3-3-4. I think that will give, 5. Sorry, that we have been doing that too, right? And not so 5. This one, because what helps is it also gives a lot more impetus to the pre-primary schools, which are fundamentally, unviable to run for that less things, right? I think it will become great for that. That's slightly unregulated, so maybe slightly more innovation can happen on that front. Second is a focus on vocational skills. I think that's important because fundamentally, we can't, keep on believing that in the rural we need to keep on doing the education which we are doing. I think it serves very less purpose to those guys' cause. So I think hopefully some of those vocational programs, especially in the high school, can get implemented properly, will really, really create a lot of, change, which is for good. So let's hope so.
Yeah. Coming back to the EdTech related piece, what all aspects, and obviously there is some bit of indicative stuff in the new education policy in terms of technology use and integration, and directly they talk a lot about artificial intelligence coming in and those kind of stuff. So what are your comments, Gauri first, or Vyas, if you want to start?
No, please. Look, I'm saying is, look, at K-12, it's more of a noise than really, really gonna make any sense, right? I mean, it's like, let's be clear, right? I mean, without really having a base, what kind of AI and other kind of things, etc., you're gonna do, right? I mean, it's not gonna work, isn't it? So my whole thing is some of those things are introductory at K-12 level. Maybe they have a much better perspective at the undergrad level and all those kind of levels, right? Where you can really, really focus on some of these aspects. So K-12, I don't think it's going to make any difference. I think this is just like one of the vocational topic, right? Nothing else. What can a child do? Fundamentally, are we trying to gonna create and say, look, we're going to give project-based admissions to the colleges? We are not talking of all that. So I think some of these things are just somebody has to fill in the document,
No, but yeah, I think one point is obviously you have to start somewhere. But Gauri, what do you think about particularly the aspects? I think especially AI. Why I'm picking AI is because right from K-12 to NRF, which I think I was hoping Prasheel will come in. There's a lot of focus on and a lot of money that will be pumped into the AI-related research also in the NRF. So what are your views specifically on this topic? We will come to other topics, but what are your frank views on the subject?
So I guess, and just as introduction, right? I mean, the way we look at, the way at least CSF is looking at technology in education, it's largely saying how will technology improve learning outcomes for children from low-income backgrounds, both in schools and at homes, right? Now, in the context of children who are either going to government schools or who are going to affordable private schools or who lack parental support in terms of education at home, we do believe that, technology can really help in democratizing education.
Yeah.
And today there are a lot of enabling conditions which do not exist in India, right? So, for example, there is not enough infrastructure that exists in schools for any meaningful deployment of EdTech, right? The device penetration at a household level is increasing significantly. Asar, recently did indicate that even in rural UP, there's almost a 40% penetration of at least a smartphone at a household level. So tech is getting into households.
Yeah.
Right? Now the question is that how do we build robust, high quality, pedagogically sound solutions and contextually relevant solutions for the low income? Right? And there, I mean, even as Vyas is saying, I think the supply is very, very shallow. Right? And when we look at it from the context of solutions catering to young children, right? Children in the age group of 3 to 8, in the vernacular, I think the supply is even more shallow.
Yeah.
And but we do believe that there is huge opportunity because I think what COVID did, and Ashish almost describes it as the Sputnik moment for EdTech, but what it did was created a lot of awareness at a household level about the use of technology for the purposes of education.
Yeah.
Right? If you looked at some of the pre-COVID surveys, you'd find that parents would say that एक तो we don't feel saksham when it comes to our child's education, and the second is that technology can be used for entertainment or at best for some knowledge, but never for the purposes of education. But when state governments started, pushing a lot of content through WhatsApp, through technology, right, it's almost created a validation for technology as a tool for education. Right, and we see that as a huge opportunity for the sector going forward. There's also a lot of demand which is coming from governments, around software. And frankly, there's not enough out there. So I mean, with this community, I think just exploring the fact that there is a very large population which is currently getting exposed to using technology for the purposes of education, and is there a way in which we can build relevant solutions for them is something which can be explored. I think with reference to the NEP and EdTech, Manish, your primary question, as I said, I think what India lacks is a vision on how technology can be integrated into normal teaching learning practices. Right, that's something which is left at a state level, and again at a state level, we find literally the IT departments of states trying to figure that out, right, rather than the education department. So I think, interestingly, the NEP calls out the creation of the National Education Technology Forum, which is going to be the science organization wanting to drive the vision for EdTech in the country, right? And in my mind, if that gets set up, right, and if that helps unlock, for example, procurement at a state level, if that helps unlock standards for EdTech, what is good quality software across different use cases, if that helps unlock, how states should be thinking about programs, right? What is the research and evaluation? Then, it will do a lot of service to the sector, right? It will help a lot of organizations grow. So I'll just pause there and,
I think Vyas wants to jump in.
No. I was saying I think I misread your question, the first one. I was thinking more you're talking about the AI ML in terms of the subjects which have been introduced in the class. Okay. My thing is, look, in the tools and technologies and help enabling education, I think a lot of technologies are going to help. But trying to introduce, it as a subject or discipline at a very early stage, that's where I had my skepticism, because we are not changing our admission mechanism in the schools, in the colleges, right? So my point is there's a lot of emphasis on a good quality education, holistic education, without revamping the admission ways, which is what is most disturbing for me, is that it will not work that way. So holistic education will happen in the country only once we start really focusing on, providing, way for the children who do holistic education, a proper admission into the schools. That's what my take.
That is true, Vyas, but where do you start? This is always a chicken and egg problem. This has always been. If you don't get, holistic students, then corporates will not deploy them. If the corporates don't come up with the offer, then you will. So I think, where do you break the cycle? And from that perspective, the attempt is good. Obviously, everyone has doubts about the level of execution that we can achieve. But in terms of directionally, I think everything is right, whatever is written. Obviously, nobody can question that. But my question was also from the perspective of when I was mentioning AI, artificial intelligence and stuff. these are newer aspects that will be beyond curriculum that will get introduced. Then there is obviously talk about 21st century skills related stuff, where I want your comments now, which is what do you think about what's the kind of impact those skills will have in the overall learning process? Is it a right thing? Are there edtech relevant opportunities there? Because I think this forum is also about, there are a lot of startups in this forum. There are a lot of people who are looking at this forum from the perspective of what will new education policy lead to in terms of the edtech startup ecosystem for K-12. I think once Prasheel comes in, we can talk about higher ed. But that was the intention. So just responding from that lens, when you look at new education policy, we look at these aspects of 21st century skills, AI, early literacy, numeracy, all of it coming at RT getting extended to 18. What does that mean? Are there any opportunities for startups in for-profit as well as not-for-profit sector? And so just your views on that, and what would be those opportunities? And what would be those
I'm a big believer of 21st century skills. I mean, of course, I have to be. I preach that all the time, right? I mean, 21st century skills is the right way to measure or prepare our kids for the future, right? I mean, if the children are not going to have ability to think, if children are not going to have a ability to design problems, right? See, you look at India, right? I mean, while we celebrate a lot of the TCS, Infosys to everything, right? It's put together not even equivalent to market cap of even one technology company. So how do you create that? And that's precisely fundamentally because of the lack of our ability to create things. We are very good helpers. We are very good number two guys to a lot of those companies. We are not the creators. And creators is fundamentally reason is because we have not been really, really focused on that in the very early childhood that you can create stuff. So I think 21st century skills are absolutely critical if we're going to have this whole Atmanirbhar India and people trying to do businesses, right? If they from childhood they start creating things, they start designing things, they start doing those things, it's gonna give them a confidence to do some of those stuff.
Sure.
So, and in terms of
close this loop, let me first quickly welcome Prasheel. Prasheel is Vice Chancellor at Avantika University. Prasheel, you are finally in. Can you just quickly spend a couple of minutes introducing yourself and Avantika University, and then we'll expose you to more questions. I think we have to do a lot of catch up in the last 20 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, my apologies because So no my name is Prasheel Suryavanshi. We have set up a unique experiment in the higher education space by the name Avantika University, which is based out of Ujjain, which is exactly the center point of the country. And this draws a lot of inspiration and a lot of influence from the historical significance and the age-old history which Ujjain hitherto had in the education space, but intermittently somewhere it had got lost. So Avantika is a very bold, new and a very bold experiment where we are trying to bring in a lot of design-centeredness and an innovative approaches in all the education or all the academic programs that we are offering. And we are extremely bullish as far as a technology incorporation or technology adoption, even in the actual delivery, even in the actual assessment is concerned. So trying to somewhere break that conventional mold of going into rote learning and moving away from the examination. So I think Avantika should be one of the very few universities, or arguably one of the only universities in the country where we don't really have any examinations. So we were one of the very few universities which were not at all affected by the pandemic, to say the least, because there were hardly any. We don't have an examination pattern like you have in the conventional sense. So, and EdTech has been a great support to us, and we constantly keep on innovating and improvising from the higher ed perspective. Yeah, over to you, Manish.
So Prasheel, a quick follow-on question, and I think I'll just bring you up to speed with what we were discussing. So first of all, your quick comments on aspects that you liked in national education policy, things that you liked, and then there are obviously areas where being mentioned. So that's what we were discussing from a K-12 perspective. Artificial intelligence, National Research Foundation has now huge outlay in terms of AI-based research and stuff. So quick response on what are the aspects from an higher education perspective you like in the new education policy. You are also bullish about it, and directionally, EdTech insights about that.
See, Manish, BS, and Gauri. First thing first, the document is very well written. But the bug, I am only hopeful that the bug doesn't stop there, and someone needs to carry it forward toward the implementation. Intermittently, I was hearing your interaction in the time when I was trying to connect, and where BS was mentioning about it should not just be in the tick in the box, and that is some sort of an apprehension which a lot of people in this country have. However, having said this, from a higher ed perspective, we can't look at national education policy really only from the higher ed perspective, because it actually will bear some fruit only if it starts from the K-12, only from the school ed. One of the most important things which I feel is extremely important and which everyone needs to push is the 21st century skills, or the life skills as we call it at Avantika University. So those are the things which I think should start getting introduced right from the school level, and it need not end at the school level, but even at the higher ed, that needs to be continued. As far as AI, ML, data science, and those things are concerned, I very strongly feel those things now transcend any disciplinary boundaries or any domain-specific exposure, because those will now be very prevalent and very pervasive across the disciplines or across the domains, be it engineering, be it design, or be it management, be it liberal studies, be it education, so on and so forth. So that's my just an initial take on the national education policy.
Great. Thanks. Gauri, that same question that Vyas was responding to, you got that question? Shall I repeat the thing that we were discussing? So, so let me just quickly repeat and bring everyone on board. So the point I'm trying to address is, this is a forum, Prasheel, you included, for startups also. So there are a lot of startups that are looking at this event. So I'm also looking at aspects, so when I meet startups, they often say that now new education policy is here, so there are now more opportunities for us. Now translate that for them, right from Gauri, your perspective, the initiative that you are leading, things like Top Parent app that you brought in, and other interesting aspects which are on the not-for-profit side, to K-12 based white spaces that have been created for startups to come in because of new education policy, to higher ed, what are interesting things that can be picked up, and just we think from a startup perspective, what are those opportunities? I'm just trying to define those opportunities for startups. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think huge opportunities, at least for the low income, frankly, because in my mind, the supply side, or for the low income from EdTech is very narrow, right? We have this huge dynamic EdTech ecosystem, which is largely catering to India 1, right? I mean, how do we get a lot of, the entrepreneurial energy to also help India 3, right? Is the big question that we are trying to answer. From the new education policy perspective, I think, maybe, the COVID effect has not necessarily been factored in as much as we would have liked to, right? But I think the few interesting things that we see happening, right, in the government circles, right, around EdTech is huge focus on at-home learning, right? So children have lost a year, right? And it's expected that the number of school days in the coming year is also going to be limited, right? So whatever is getting taught in school will necessarily need to be augmented at home, right? Children from low-income backgrounds, again, what we have seen is resistance to apps, right? They are not willing to download new apps. There's only so much space available on their mobile phones, right? So how do you almost use channels which on which these parents are in order to, help their children learn better. I've put on chat a report which is in some ways, putting together the global innovations in EdTech in the K-12 space, very neatly categorized by different use cases of EdTech, right? And when we do a deep scan, right, and when we look at that, the innovations, I think the few spaces where we find, not too many solutions in India or globally. One is the parental engagement space for young children, right? And I think that also led to the creation of a new solution called Top Parent, with CSF is supporting, and what I mean by that is that, for young children, parents need to feel empowered when it comes to their children's learning, and they don't today, right? Also, they get very confused about what should be made available to their children, right? So I guess, I see a lot of white space, on the parental engagement side. I see a lot of white space on the teacher professional development side, for example, as well. Right. In China, for example, you'd find some really exciting solutions, Zoe Bank, etc., which are integrated solutions for homework, for doubt resolution, for assessments, etc. Right. So I guess those are other spaces which I don't see a lot of action happening on. New education policy, Manish, may not necessarily talk to a lot of this initiative, but we do see demand coming from government. Right. I think I just want to call out this interesting initiative which the Government of India has undertaken, which is called the NDIA, National Digital Education Architecture, which is going to be like the National Digital Health Mission. Right. And the idea will be that, it's almost like the India stack, which was created for finance, right? A similar stack is going to get created for education, which will allow for, the startup community to build on protocols, and not necessarily need to reinvent stuff. So I guess that can also be a game changer when it comes to engaging with the startup ecosystem.
Interesting. Biras, your thoughts? Opportunities for EdTech
I'm just thinking of is, look, just how to structure that one through. See, look, there are a couple of opportunities in, EdTech sector, right? Especially because of NEP. The good thing is, like, if the schools have to be creative in terms of, experiential learning, as well as run a lot of vocational courses. So entrepreneurs can actually focus on those than earlier think of, like, I need something around maths and science or competitive exam really to go to school. So I think that's a very good, line on to focus on, probably an effective computer science learning, effective arts and crafts with experiential learning, trying to do some courses or vocational, which schools might have a lesser skills on. So I think those are opportunities where the entrepreneurs can focus on, and second, I think is, lot of entrepreneurs actually should focus on is, how to take some of these learnings and implement it in the areas which are even behind India. I think sometimes a lot of these entrepreneurs are missing the point of that India is not the only place. So we can actually go and do a lot of this stuff in Africa, Middle East, Southeast Asia. And recently we have some good tractions around those by Indians. I mean, there is a very small company that way called Yardsticks, which was not so successful in India, but they made their money in Middle East because they could go there, they could talk. So I will say is, look, as an entrepreneur, look at what innovation has been put in NEP, which some of those things I have mentioned, and try to see whether some of those innovations can be global, at least in the lower economies than India. Then you have a viable business around that.
Good point. Prasheel, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, Manish, huge opportunity. Most of the entrepreneurs in the EdTech space now should start looking at the higher ed with a very different perspective, or with a very different spectacle, I would say. One of the most important aspects, and I would say COVID as just an incidental thing in that, but somewhere I feel a lot of these EdTech initiatives are really not coming into the higher ed space. Partly the higher ed domain is also to blame because of their so rigid thinking and the conventional mindset. However, one of the most important thing is, which I would like the future entrepreneurs to venture into is the prototyping space. Like you see, we as a university or design as a discipline, design as a domain, engineering. So how would you really study mechanical engineering in the online domain? Or how do you really study? See, studying computer science is relatively easy. I mean, if you still have tools, you still have platforms to do that. But how do you, for example, do something like an industrial design? Doing communication or an user experience design in an online mode, or running an artificial intelligence or a machine learning class, that way is simple. But how do you really teach him something like a 3D printing in an online mode? So can there be? Second, I feel the edtech space needs to move beyond the mobile app and the desktop application. Now, there has to be a lot of thinking in that aspect also. And third, very important, and this is directly an extension of what BS was trying to say, was how do you have more and more tools to supplement the experiential learning? Because unless and until this is done, as I said in my initial initial comment, the document is very well written. But Manish, I mean, as is the want, most of the documents are very well written everywhere in the globe. The point is how effectively they are being delivered. Now, from the higher ed perspective, I would say there are for any higher ed institute, there are three major aspects. One is the curriculum, another second is the delivery, and third is the assessment. I don't see a lot of these entrepreneurs putting a thought onto the assessment part apart from the proctored exam. The proctored examination is just one part of the issue. So that is, again, we are just trying to convert a conventional mode and just trying to supplement it with the use of a technology. But with national education policy in force and with a lot of flexibility given from a policy perspective, I think it's high time the universities and the entrepreneurs sit together and really come up with some sort of an innovative approaches even to assessments. Not to forget, of course, the delivery part of it. Yeah.
So Prashil, just a follow-up question there. So when you spoke about industrial design, and I think this has been a challenge that even NSDC and skill councils have been facing. How do you bring in hardcore skills in the online way? So there have been welding simulators, there have been those kind of simulators, but the cost dynamics pretty much makes it very, very unviable. And now with VR coming in some form, AR coming in some form, are you seeing any interesting traction anywhere in the globe related to these technologies in higher ed, or it is still some years away in terms of affordability and stuff?
I still think it is some years away, but even moving to the simulators part of it, I think there has to be some different model, and will all of us in this space will have to really sit together and brainstorm and come up with some sort of an alternative model which is at the cross sections of maybe where everyone doesn't own everything, or some sort of an aggregation is happening. Like there is a very interesting experiment which started with in MIT Boston a couple of years back by the name of Fab Lab. So Fab Lab is essentially a network of laboratories, and there are 250 of them all around the globe, which are really connected. And then in every area, like in Madhya Pradesh, Ujjain has got one of the Fab Labs. Like in Pune, you have one of the Fab Labs. But then it doesn't remain, because the whole essence or the whole notion of that concept is community. How can community benefit from out of that? How can community learn out of that? So because the Fab Lab boasts of some very heavy equipments and heavy machines like a CNC router or a laser cutting machine or a milling machine, which maybe every education institute or every small institute might even not be able to afford, honestly speaking. So can there be some model work around like that, even from a simulator perspective? I remember a couple of years back, Government of India having one similar project, uh, some similar project wherein a couple of IITs and College of Engineering Pune, from where I come from, was also a part of. But not much traction has happened into that. But I definitely see virtual reality and augmented reality might play a role, but then there are not many use cases at least as of now. There are not many use cases, and especially more than virtual, I would say augmented reality would be the game changer.
Yeah, no, I believe so. And just a quick thing there, and if you have any examples, you can share. So, there are a lot of performance support tools that auto industry deploys. Good auto companies deploy where the workers use augmented reality visors, smart glasses to place in parts and stuff. So, are there any interesting best practices in terms of universities working with auto companies like them, and leveraging whatever costs that they have, sharing it from student exposure perspective, internship, the capstone project that your university does, and many universities have started those kind of initiatives. So, any best practices, any examples that can be thought about? Again, I'm thinking more from a there can be a startup opportunity there, connecting industry and higher ed together to leverage and solve problems.
I don't really, I can't really think of an immediate answer to this, or maybe I can't recall an immediate example to this. But I also feel, Manish, edtech sector or edtech space to also play a lot of role in the actual classroom learning as well. Why should edtech be limited only to remote learning and online learning? They can play a supplementary role, because I think the way future would neither be face to face and neither be online. Instead, it could be a blended form of learning. I very strongly foresee, Manish, I mean, 10 years down the line, the students might not come to the university for the complete 4 months. He might just come for a month or so, maybe another 3 months he spends wherever he wants. So, EdTech needs to come even from a classroom perspective. Now, if you talk of the augmented reality and virtual reality, there are some examples here and there wherein people have developed training modules based on, say, a refinery or a chemical plant or a sugar industry, but that still is not at a very matured level, I would say, and it is still from the corporate training perspective, not at the university training perspective.
Sure, got it.
Yeah.
Gauri, coming to you, again, I'm now wearing startups hat, and asking question more from startup perspective. So if I look at bottom of pyramid as a segment, are there models? Obviously, not for profit. There are a lot of people trying things, but you don't find enough scalable opportunities in not-for-profit model. Are there good, interesting for-profit model for startups for bottom of pyramid segment, where so there are some experiment that you have done in CSF, but things that a startup can look at and pick pieces from new education policy, especially early literacy, numeracy, and those aspects, and some insights on those lines. What can there be model for startups in this segment?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Manish, and I don't know if I have an answer to this, right? But if I was to look at the low-income segment, right, what are we talking about? We're talking about essentially three sub-segments within that low-income segment. There is the government school segment, right? There is the affordable private school segment, and then there is, households, right? So we're talking about B2C or retail. Now, in terms of government, right, I think extremely excited in terms of their ability to provide scale, right? But it comes with its associated challenges around procurement, around bureaucracy, etc. Right? In the government segment, I think there are a few progressive states, and obviously, education being a state subject, decision making, procurement, etc., happens at the state level. We do find interest, for profits, creating a niche for themselves, right? In a few progressive states, for example, Conway Genius as a for-profit, was able to, get into Andhra Pradesh through a robust procurement process. Mindspark was able to do the same. We are finding a lot of interesting edtech orgs around personalized adaptive learning, around digital classrooms, finding space in the school segment. But it's a slow process, and it does require a fair investment on time and resources, right, to at least get embedded. The second is the affordable private school segment, right? Again, very large, 47% of India's children are going to affordable private schools, right? So the question is over there is extremely fragmented, right? So how do startups really, achieve scale, with low resources is something, which we don't work on, right? And it's a tough one. And then the third is the B2C space. And there, frankly, is where I see real opportunity. And as I mentioned earlier, especially in the context of foundational literacy and numeracy, and given that the government is planning to announce a mission, right, like Skill India or like Swachh Bharat, right? They are thinking of a mission around foundational literacy and numeracy. The supply is very shallow, right? And I think there is opportunity, right, for the startup community to be thinking around solutions for math, for languages in the vernacular. This white space really emerged during COVID, where every government was struggling to figure out what resources they should be sending to children, right? And frankly, there wasn't that much. Low tech is another very interesting model which can be explored, right? So we Prasheel, you said, we need to start thinking beyond apps, right, for mobiles and all that, right? But I also think that we need to probably think a little bit more low tech when we think of, bottom of pyramid, right? For example, a very interesting experiments that happened in Botswana, with SMS, IVRS, right? Sesame through television has been able to demonstrate significant impact on learning outcomes. So I guess, these are some of the other interesting areas which I don't think there's enough depth in the Indian market so far.
Vyas, another aspect which often never get covered, and because there is maybe no market or some behavior issues or fundamentally market issue, which is a teacher-led startups, startup focusing on teachers per se as their prime target audience versus, so obviously we know that B2C, there are, now unicorns being made in India and all of that is happening. But, this teacher thing has been, for some reason, not been cracked. I can recollect only one model, which is the international model, teachers pay teachers, which got some bit of traction where, teachers used to, they share their session plan stuff, and there is some revenue model there. So they have scaled to a certain level. But largely, I think this space is not addressed significantly by startups. Any thoughts on that? What are the models that could potentially be picked up, and with also NEP in the background that, AI, 21st century skills and multidisciplinary learning, all those things coming in, some models there in some sense.
See, I personally believe is, look, teachers, the reason why we have not seen a lot of academicians being able to do a lot of great entrepreneurship, right, in tech is because fundamentally teachers do not come from a very good technical background. See, why in the last 30 years, pretty much everything has been done by technologists. It's because technology has to be stopped seeing as a subject and has to become a core aspect of every professional, right? So I think the next generation teachers probably will come up with all those kind of things. Today's teachers, they are not, I'm telling you, trying to make...
I just want to correct. My question is about startups focusing on teachers as a audience, primary audience, as their
model.
Sometimes,
Sometimes I'm saying is, look, I'm the only guy, right, who is actually doing that in this whole country. Rest all went bankrupt. That's precisely what my focus in life is, right? That if you do not enable teacher, you're not going to have a fundamental change. These cartoons are not going to change anything a lot, right? So you got to build tools, you got to build stuff which the teachers need. And, that's what we try to do. So in fact, when you see, I'm trying to sell the Next Learning platform now pretty much worldwide, because I'm partly bored of trying to break my head around Indian teachers, right? But I'm saying that's what we are trying to do, right? It's, look, how do you use, classroom effectively, right? You have to use digital content, you have to use tools. How do you do homework properly? Like, I keep on giving people example, homework, a problem which has been worldwide, forever problem, has been finally fixed by using some of the adaptive technologies, because it exists today, right? People are, skeptical of will. So I'm saying is that there are companies which are focusing on that. Problem which is there for the companies to focus on that is it becomes B2B, and it becomes enterprise sales, which startups need to operate at a certain scale. And in India, unfortunately, a lot of these private equity guys are not buying into enterprise software sales in India as a market size and only focusing on that. So you get two kind of investments. One is B2C in India and B2B for the world. Yeah. Until now, it was very tough to make a B2B for the world in EdTech space, because education in K-12 especially was very local. But I think hopefully in a year and a half, those mindsets will change once we'll realize that the SaaS platforms can be used globally, and VCs will start investing, and then suddenly it will catch entrepreneurs' interest. Those kind of things will happen, hopefully.
But just a follow-up question there. When you say B2B for the world, the challenge obviously often is curriculum. Challenge often is example and contextualization. So are there models that
so that's precisely what I'm trying to say, right? Technology will get worldwide. Right. See, pedagogy is in the content level. Look, the adaptive systems are going to be adaptive systems. You can upload your questions, but just trying to make a proper Grammarly, right, is not dependent on the world, right? Even though Americans might have a different definition of grammar, but I mean, rest of the world at least agrees on a grammar, right? So I'm saying so technology will solve those pronunciations, grammar, language learning. Duolingo is now global, right? So I think the EdTech platforms which are going to help towards adaptive, towards continuous learning, collaboration, solving and making all the things automated, right? Those things, platforms will become global in nature. Like I will tell you, frankly, pandemic forced me to get out of India. And today, like almost 9 countries, I'm able to sell my platform. Places where I never thought I will probably end up, like Turkey, South Africa. I mean, I would have probably never gone. Egypt. So I'm saying, so I think global platforms will become a reality sooner than later.
Okay. Prashil, your thoughts about any models, any things, any ideas for teachers, not for students? I think that's the question.
No. So I'm saying is the teachers are going to need these tools. Say, for example,
as I'm telling you, Vyas, this is targeted to Prashil Vyas.
In fact, I've been dying to want some or the other platform which is directed at the teachers, and this has been a real pain point. And I agree with BS as well. And this has definitely been a pain point. And I'm sure if you talk to most of the vice chancellors in this country, you will come across a similar answer to that. Now here, Manish, more than technology, I agree with BS in the sense that the technology has to be made central. Technology has to transcend the boundaries, all those things. But one very important thing, and I don't have a ready-made answer for that, that is, how do you really change the mindset? How do you really change that thought? How do you make the teacher understand that you are not the be-all and end-all of everything, and you still need to learn? And I don't know, I have not come across any such technology, but this will be an interesting thing. But adaptiveness, which BS was mentioning, and adaptive learning, I think would be the need of the hour and will be the way to go, not only from a teacher's perspective, but even from a student's perspective. And that is where I see a lot of cognitive sciences and decision sciences and user psychology coming into picture. And that is how it will be synced even to the national education policy. And one of the important courses which I personally feel as the vice chancellor of an university, apart from technology, which every student should learn, is essentially psychology. Because unless and until you have the basics of that, I mean, no matter wherever you work, whether you work with the kids or whether you work in a corporate or whether you work as a startup, I mean, one way or the other, there are going to be challenges. So I think with the national education policy in force, but then the universities will also have to be courageous. India has not really been known for taking bold steps and bold initiatives, and the society also has to start accepting this. So your initial thought, how the difference between the chicken and the egg, I also very strongly feel the parents also have to change a lot. The expectations of the parents also have to change, and they also have to start looking at the entrepreneurial career as a viable career. A student taking admission in a new university as not as a just in case admission, or it should be the preferred mode of admission. So those things will definitely come out of this. But yes, the university setups and the entrepreneurial ecosystem definitely needs to come together, and I'm extremely glad with what Next Education has been doing. But then this has to be further consolidated and brought out in a comprehensive manner, which is aimed at teachers.
Prashil, just a
Thank
follow-up question there. Follow-up question there. So, regarding multidisciplinary learning, because I think that is another aspect that NEP talks a great deal about: multiple entry, exit points, multidisciplinary learning. Now, for multidisciplinary learning, are there models? I have not seen enough people again focused on it. It's a new emergent phenomena in Indian space. So are there models? Is there anything, any advice anyone can look at that as an interesting idea to explore and create a startup around?
Yeah, I mean, there can be. I mean, there are no ready-made use cases as far as the country right now is concerned. But the part of the blame also goes to our regulatory agencies and regulatory bodies, where there is hardly any freedom for the universities to do. But then there are smaller experiments like Avantika being one of them. There are quite a few in the northern part of India, like maybe a Plaksha coming up with some sort of an innovativeness. But how we can really connect this to the startup ecosystem is something I think we need to really sit down and
Gauri,
work out.
Gauri, your thoughts about teacher-focused models?
So, so in my mind, at least for K-12, right? I mean, there's two types of models that we've seen so far, right? So one is models which are focusing on teacher professional development, right? So they are either providing, content-based inputs to teachers. If a teacher does not understand photosynthesis, then, there will be modules which will help her understand photosynthesis, right? And I think that is one model that we've seen. The other model is where, they're almost providing these bite-sized curriculum-aligned resources for teachers to be able to use in the classroom, right? The presumption being that a teacher will not spend an additional minute outside of class, preparing for her lesson, right? So is there some ready-made material that can be made available to her for her to be able to transact better in the classroom? Now, during COVID, for example, at least in the government system, the first model, right, which was the TPD model, was widely used, right, because teachers were at home, and governments said that, look, this is a great opportunity to upskill them, right, through online courses. So that is something that we see happening, and for there to be sustained usage over time. On the bite-sized curriculum-aligned resources model, I think it's great value, right? Because every day, imagine a teacher who's going unprepared into class, right? And I'm talking about teachers, government schools, etc., where only a fraction are really motivated teachers, right? There's a huge middle which will go unprepared into class, right? If on the floor they're the lesson plans are made available to them. They are said that, look, you can refer to this worksheet, you can do this example, in the context of teaching a child ABC or whatever else, right? It can be significantly useful. But I mean, frankly, the question is, who's the buyer, right? I mean, again, here it requires at the retail level, it requires very highly motivated teachers to be investing on their own, for their own development. And at the school level, I think today, at least on the government side, they have many platforms, Nishta, Diksha, right, which are all teacher-focused platforms, right? So will government want to buy, from the private sector? I'm not sure.
Great. So now the timer is up. My quick last rapid fire round, which is about, I give you $1 trillion each, and you have to implement one aspect of NEP very strongly related to EdTech, what will you bet on? And we can just take 30 seconds to respond to it. Vyas, you want to go first?
Yeah. Look, I would put that money to give the device in child's hand.
Okay.
Because I firmly believe that joy of learning exists in every child. If the child has the device, the rest all anyways has been solved in India. We have excess electricity. No power dam is running at 100% capacity in India anymore. We have power, we have cheap bandwidth, we have content available right from Khan Academy to Next Education. Everything is available. If we can make the device, then fundamentally we will bring the equality that if you want to learn, you can learn. I think that we do. Should be right.
Prashil, what will you do with it?
I'll take a cue from BS. Apart from the device, though of course the bandwidth is cheap, but the last mile connectivity, if something can be done to upgrade that infrastructure of taking the last mile connectivity, and as I said, this EdTech needs to move beyond the screens and beyond the mobile apps. So radio could be one of the very effective mediums, and there has been some interesting experiment going at many places, one at our university as well. But as you know, I mean, the earlier days.
So bandwidth and radio. Gauri, over to you. Sorry, Prashil, cutting you.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would agree with Vyas to some extent, right? Saying that devices, right, in school and at home. But I would couple it with, high quality software. And frankly, I see, I hugely respect Next, Khan Academy, but I do see, there being scope for a lot of more investment going into the software side, right, across different use cases, homework, etc. So I think software, device, parental engagement, that whole program, right, I'd put my money there.
Great. I think that brings it to the end of interesting panel discussion. I thank all the panelists for making it, despite technological hassles and stuff. It was indeed an interesting conversation. Thank you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.